Percy Byshe Shelley, 4th of August 1792 to the 8th of July 1822, was an English writer who is considered one of the major English Romantic poets. A radical in his poetry as well as in his political and social views, Shelley did not achieve fame during his lifetime, but recognition of his achievements in poetry grew steadily following his death, and he became an important influence on subsequent generations of poets, including Robert Browning, Algernon Charles Swinburne, Thomas Hardy, and W.B. Yeats. American literary critic Harold Bloom describes him as a superb craftsman, a lyric poet without rival, and surely one of the most advanced, skeptical intellects ever to write a poem. Shelley's life was marked by family crises, ill health, and a backlash against his atheism, political views, and a defiance of social conventions. He went into permanent self-exile in Italy in 1818, and over the next 4 years produced what Zachary Leader and Michael O'Neill call some of the finest poetry of the Romantic period. His second wife, Mary Shelley, was the author of Frankenstein. Percy Byshe Shelley died in a boating accident in 1822 at age 29. Note on the Mask of Anarchy by Mrs. Shelley. Though Shelley's first eager desire to excite his countrymen to resist openly the oppressions existent during the good old times had faded with early youth, still his warmest sympathies were for the people. He was a Republican and loved a democracy. He looked on all human beings as inheriting an equal right to possess the dearest privileges of our nature, the necessaries of life when fairly earned by labour and intellectual instruction. His hatred of any despotism that looked upon the people as not to be consulted or protected from want and ignorance was intense. He was residing near Leghorn at Villa Volsovano, writing the Cenci when the news of the Manchester massacre reached us. It roused in him violent emotions of indignation and compassion. The great truth that the many, if accordant and resolute, could control the few, as was shown some years after, made him long to teach his injured countrymen how to resist. Inspired by these feelings, he wrote the Mask of Anarchy, which he sent to his friend Leigh Hunt to be inserted in the Examiner, of which he was then the editor. I did not insert it, Leigh Hunt writes in his valuable and interesting preface to this poem when he printed it in 1832, because I thought that the public at large had not become sufficiently discerning to do justice to the sincerity and kind-heartedness of the spirit that walked in this flaming robe of verse. Days of outrage have passed away, and with them the exasperation that would cause such an appeal to the many to be injurious. Without being aware of them, they at one time acted on his suggestions and gained the day. But they rose when human life was respected by the minister in power. Such was not the case during the administration which excited Shelley's abhorrence. The poem was written for the people and is therefore in a more popular tone than usual. Portions strike as abrupt and unpolished, but many stanzas are all his own. I heard him repeat and admired those beginning, "My father time is old and grey," before I knew to what poem they were to belong. But the most touching passage is that which describes the blessed effects of liberty. It might make a patriot of any man whose heart was not wholly closed against his humbler fellow creatures. The Peterloo Massacre. The Peterloo Massacre took place at St. Peter's Field, Manchester, Lancashire, England, on Monday, the 16th of August, 1819. 18 people died and 400 to 700 were injured when cavalry charged into a crowd of around 60,000 people who had gathered to demand the reform of parliamentary representation. After the end of the Napoleonic Wars in 1815, there was an acute economic slump, accompanied by chronic unemployment and harvest failure due to the year without a summer, and worsened by the Corn Laws, which kept the price of bread high. At that time, only around 11% of adult males had the right to vote, very few of them in the industrial north of England, which was worst hit. Radicals identified parliamentary reform as the solution, and a mass campaign to petition Parliament for manhood suffrage gained 750,000 signatures in 1817, but was flatly rejected by the House of Commons. When a second slump occurred in early 1819, radicals sought to mobilise huge crowds to force the government to back down. The movement was particularly strong in the northwest, where the Manchester Patriotic Union organised a mass rally in August 1819, addressed by well-known radical orator Henry Hunt. Shortly after the meeting began, local magistrates called on the Manchester and Salford Yeomanry to arrest Hunt and several others on the platform with him. The Yeomanry charged into the crowd, knocking down a woman and killing a child, and finally apprehended Hunt. Cheshire Magistrates Chairman William Hulton then summoned the 15th Hussars to disperse the crowd. They charged with sabres drawn, and contemporary accounts estimated that between 9 and 17 people were killed and 400 to 700 injured in the ensuing confusion. Historian Robert Poole has called the Peterloo Massacre the bloodiest political event of the 19th century in English soil, and a political earthquake in the northern powerhouse of the Industrial Revolution. In 2019, on the 200th anniversary of the massacre, Manchester City Council inaugurated a new Peterloo Memorial by the artist Jeremy Dalla, featuring 11 concentric circles of local stone engraved with the names of the dead and the places from which the victims came. The Mask of Anarchy by Percy, Byshe, Shelley. Written on the occasion of the massacre at Manchester. As I lay asleep in Italy, there came a voice from over the sea, and with great power it forth led me to walk in the visions of poesy. I met Murder on the way. He had a mask like Castle Ray, very smooth he looked yet grim. 7 bloodhounds followed him. All were fat and well they might be in admirable plight, for 1 by 1 and 2 by 2 he tossed them human hearts to chew, which from his wide cloak he drew. Next came Fraud, and he had on like Eldon an ermined gown. His big tears, for he wept well, turned to millstones as they fell. And the little children who round his feet played to and fro, thinking every tear a gem, had their brains knocked out by them. Clothed with the Bible as with light in the shadows of the night, like Sidmouth, next Hypocrisy on a crocodile rode by. And many more destructions played in this ghastly masquerade, all disguised even to the eyes, like bishops, lawyers, peers, or spies. Last came Anarchy. He rode on a white horse, splashed with blood. He was pale even to the lips, like death in the apocalypse. And he wore a kingly crown, and in his grasp a sceptre shone. On his brow this mark I saw: I am God and King and Law. With a pace stately and fast, over English land he passed, trampling to a mire of blood the adoring multitude. And a mighty troop around with their trampling shook the ground, waving each a bloody sword for the service of their Lord. And with glorious triumph they rode through England proud and gay, drunk as with intoxication of the wine of desolation. Over fields and towns, from sea to sea, past the pageant swift and free, tearing up and trampling down, till they came to London town. And each dweller, panic-stricken, felt his heart with terror sicken, hearing the tempestuous cry of the triumph of anarchy. For with pomp to meet him came, clothed in arms like blood and flame, the hired murderers, who did sing, "Thou art God and Law and King." We have waited, weak and lone, for the coming mighty one. Our purses are empty, our swords are cold. Give us glory and blood and gold. Lawyers and priests, a motley crowd, to the earth their pale brows bowed, like a bad prayer not over loud, whispering, "Thou art law and God." Then all cried with one accord, "Thou art King and God and Lord. Anarchy, to thee we bow, be thy name made holy now." And Anarchy, the skeleton, bowed and grinned to every one, as well as if his education had cost 10 millions to the nation. For he knew the palaces of our kings were rightly his the sceptre, crown and globe, and the gold inwoven robe. So he sent his slaves before to seize upon the bank and tower, and was proceeding with intent to meet his pensioned parliament. When one fled past a maniac maid, and her name was Hope, she said, but she looked more like despair, and she cried out in the air, "My father, time is weak and grey with waiting for a better day. See how idiot-like he stands, fumbling with his palsied hands. He has had child after child, and the dust of death is piled over everyone but me. Misery, oh misery." Then she lay down in the street right before the horse's feet, expecting with a patient eye murder, fraud, and anarchy. When between her and her foes a mist alight, an image rose, small at first and weak and frail, like the vapour of a veil, till as clouds grow on the blast, like tower-crowned giants striding fast, and glare with lightnings as they fly, and speak in thunder to the sky. It grew a shape arrayed in mail, brighter than the viper's scale, and upborne on wings whose grain was as the light of the sunny rain. On its helm seen far away, a planet like the morning's lay, and those plumes it light rained through, like a shower of crimson dew. With step as soft as wind it passed over the heads of men, so fast that they knew the presence there, and looked, but all was empty air.
As flowers beneath May's footstep waken, as stars from night's loose hair are shaken, as waves arise when loud winds call, thoughts sprung wherever that step did fall.
And the prostrate multitude looked, and ankle-deep in blood, Hope, that maiden most serene, was walking with a quiet mien. And Anarchy, the ghastly birth, lay dead earth upon the earth. The horse of death, tameless as wind, fled, and with his hooves did grind. To dust the murderers thronged behind. A rushing light of clouds and splendour, a sense of waking and yet tender, was heard and felt, that at its close these words of joy and fear arose, as if their own indignant earth, which gave the sons of England birth, had felt their blood upon their brow, and shuddering with a mother's throe, had turned every drop of blood by which her face had been bedewed to an accent unwithstood, as if her heart had cried aloud. Men of England, heirs of glory, heroes of an unwritten story, nurslings of one mighty mother, hopes of her and one another, Rise like lions after slumber in unvanquishable number. Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep had fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few. What is freedom? Ye can tell that which slavery is too well, for its very name has grown to an echo of your own. 'Tis to work and have such pay as just keeps life from day to day, in your limbs as in a cell, for the tyrant's use to dwell, so that ye for them are made, loom and plough and sword and spade, with or without your own will bent to their defence and nourishment. 'Tis to see your children weak with their mother's pine and peak, when the winter winds are bleak, they are dying whilst I speak. 'Tis to hunger for such diet as the rich man in his riot casts to the fat dogs that lie surfeiting beneath his eye. 'Tis to let the ghost of gold take from toil 1,000-fold, more than ever its substance could in the tyrannies of old. Paper coin, that forgery of the title deeds which ye hold to something of the worth of the inheritance of earth. 'Tis to be a slave in soul, and to hold no strong control over your own wills, but be all that others make of ye. And at length when ye complain with a murmur weak and vain, 'tis to see the tyrant's crew ride over your wives and you. Blood is on the grass like dew. Then it is to feel revenge, fiercely thirsting to exchange blood for blood and wrong for wrong. Do not thus when ye are strong. Birds find rest in narrow nest when weary of their winged quest. Beasts find fare in woody lair when storm and snow are in the air. Asses, swine have litter spread, and with fitting food are fed. All things have a home but one, thou, O Englishman, hast none. This is slavery. Savage men or wild beasts within a den would endure, not as ye do, but such ills they never knew. What art thou, freedom? Oh, could slaves answer from their living graves this demand, tyrants would flee like a dream's dim imagery. Thou art not, as impostors say, a shadow soon to pass away, a superstition and a name echoing from the cave of fame. For the labourer thou art bred, and a comely table spread, from his daily labour come in a neat and happy home. Thou art clothes and fire and food for the trampled multitude. No, in countries that are free, such starvation cannot be, as in England now we see. To the rich thou art a check when his foot is on the neck of his victim, thou dost make that he treads upon a snake. Thou art justice never for gold, may thy righteous laws be sold, as laws are in England thou, shield us alike the high and low. Thou art wisdom, free men never dream that God will damn forever all who think those things untrue, of which priests make such ado. Thou art peace, never by thee would blood and treasure wasted be, as tyrants wasted them when all leagued to quench thy flame in Gaul. What if English toil and blood was poured forth even as a flood? It availed, O liberty, to dim but not extinguish thee. Thou art love, the rich have kissed thy feet, and like him follow Christ. Give their substance to the free, and through the rough world follow thee. Or turn their wealth to arms, and make war for thy beloved's sake, on wealth and war and fraud, whence they drew the power which is their prey. Science, poetry, and thought are thy lamps. They make the lot of the dwellers in a cot so serene they curse it not. Spirit, patience, gentleness, all that can adorn and bless, art thou, let deeds, not words, express thine exceeding loveliness. Let a great assembly be of the fearless and the free on some spot of English ground where the plains stretch wide around. Let the blue sky overhead, the green earth on which ye tread, all that must eternal be, witness the solemnity. From the corners uttermost of the bounds of English coast, from every hut, village and town, where those who live and suffer moan for others' misery or their own, from the workhouse and the prison where pale as corpses newly risen, women, children, young and old, groan for pain and weep for cold, from the haunts of daily life, where is waged the daily strife with common wants and common cares, which sows the human heart with tears. Lastly, from the palaces where the murmur of distress echoes like the distant sound of a wind alive around. Those prison halls of wealth and fashion, where some few feel such compassion for those who groan and toil and wail, as must make their brethren pale. Ye who suffer woes untold, or to feel or to behold your lost country bought and sold with a price of blood and gold. Let a vast assembly be, and with great solemnity declare with measured words that ye are, as God has made ye, free. Be your strong and simple words, keen to wound as sharpened swords, and wide as targes let them be, with their shade to cover ye. Let the tyrants pour around with a quick and startling sound, like the loosening of a sea, troops of armed emblazonry. Let the charged artillery drive till the dead air seems alive, with the clash of clanging wheels and the tramp of horses' heels. Let the fixed bayonet gleam with sharp desire to whet its bright point in English blood, looking keen as one for food. Let the horsemen's scimitars wheel and flash like fearless stars, thirsting to eclipse their burning in a sea of death and mourning. Stand ye calm and resolute, like a forest close and mute, with folded arms and looks which are weapons of unvanquished war. And let panic, who outspeeds the career of armed steeds, pass a disregarded shade through your phalanx undismayed. Let the lords of your own land, good or ill, between you stand, hand to hand and foot to foot, arbiters of the dispute. The old laws of England, they whose reverend heads with age are grey, children of a wiser day, and whose solemn voice must be thine own echo, liberty. On those who first should violate such sacred heralds in their state, rest the blood that must ensue, and it will not rest on you. And if then the tyrants dare, let them ride among you there, slash and stab and maim and hew, what they like that let them do. With folded arms and steady eyes and little fear and less surprise, look upon them as they slay, till their rage has died away. Then they will return with shame to the place from which they came, and the blood thus shed will speak in hot blushes on their cheek. Every woman in the land will point at them as they stand. They will hardly dare to greet their acquaintance in the street. And the bold, true warriors who have hugged danger in wars will turn to those who would be free, ashamed of such base company. And that slaughter to the nation shall steam up like inspiration, eloquent oracula, a volcano heard afar. And these words shall then become like oppression's thundered doom, ringing through each heart and brain, heard again and again and again. Rise like lions after slumber, in unvanquishable number. Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep had fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few.